Welcome to Game Grains, the whiskey gaming channel. I'm your player one, Richard. Old Dominick has just released batch 2 of their 8-year reserve bourbon, and early reviews are already saying batch 2 far surpasses the OG and highly rated batch number 1. So of course I needed to find out for myself and was able to secure a bottle. So today I'm going to share with you my tasting notes on batch number 2 and let you know how it compares to the OG. So grab your controllers, pour yourself a dram, and let's get into it. Now, those of you that are longtime viewers, you know that I am a huge fan of Old Dominick Distilling, a hometown favorite located here in the heart of Memphis. And last year when they announced that they were going to release an 8-year reserve bourbon, I was beyond ecstatic. Finally, an opportunity for them to showcase their great whiskey at its oldest age statement. Now, some of you may be saying, well, wait, didn't they have older whiskey under their hulling station label? And you'd be right. However, that was not their own distillate. That was all sourced whiskey. This 8-year reserve bourbon is their own liquid. So, when I picked up batch number 1, I brought it home with very high expectations. And in full transparency, it did not meet those expectations. And part of it, I believe, has to do with the char. Now, with these barrels, they used a heavy char 4. And upon opening and sipping the first bit, I ended up getting a lot of wood tannin. And those other notable notes from Old Dominick that I typically enjoy were not able to shine. So when batch 2 was announced, I was a little bit apprehensive. However, a lot of my fellow influencers and whiskey tubers were raving about how much better batch 2 was. So with a little bit of apprehension, I went ahead and picked up a bottle. Now, I cracked this yesterday, and as you can see, there's already quite a bit that has been taken out of the bottle. And that's because batch 2 did not let me down. All of those expectations that I had in batch 1 were met and exceeded here with batch number 2. Now, before we go diving into this bottle, you know, of course, we have to unpack some information. Now, a lot of this is already revealed on the label. We know that it is an 8-year distillate, and this is their original whiskey. Now, as I mentioned before, they do use a heavy char 4 on their barrels to help with adding flavor. Now, the mash bill is something that has me a little perplexed, and I'll tell you why here in just a second. Last year, which I'm assuming also this year, the mash bill was a 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. Now, where the slight confusion comes from is that that is the mash bill that they use for their Tennessee whiskey and their bonded Tennessee whiskey. Tennessee whiskey? Bourbon? Anyway, I digress. Now, the price tag for these 8-year original distillate whiskeys is actually pretty good. It ranges from about $60 to $65 per bottle. All right, now that we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive first into batch number 2. So I'm going to set batch 1 over here off to the side, and we will revisit that and do our little comparison in just a moment. Now, to save a little bit of time, I went ahead and poured some into my Glen of batch number 2. Let's go ahead and get in on the nose. My goodness. The first thing that I'm getting is just a really rich caramel note. Almost if you could take, it reminds me a little about having like a caramel or a maple glazed donut. That's the scent that I'm getting. Just a very rich, sweet caramel note. Now, there's definitely some baking spice notes that are there. The subtlest hint of like a buttercream. There's some definite oak influence, which would be understandable with it being a heavy char 4 barrel. But this is amazing. Just, I'm really enjoying that. You sometimes have memories linked to certain smells. We sometimes as a family will go and pick up donuts on Sunday just as like a lazy breakfast, and this makes me think of picking up donuts and just hanging out with my family, especially that caramel glazed note. This is just heavenly. But that's not what we're here for. We're here to hear about how this tastes. So in on the flavor or the taste. Cheers. So good. So that oak tannins, those wood tannins, are there. They're not as prominent as you might think that they would be with whiskey that's sitting in a heavy char for 8 years. That sweet note is there, not as strong as it is on the nose, but definitely delicious and present. Those baking spices for me seem to be a little bit more at the forefront than they were whenever it came to the nose. Let's get on the taste again. Cheers. That is so good. What batch number 1 was lacking when I first tried it, this more than makes up for it. When I purchased batch number 1, I had a preconceived idea as to what I wanted it to taste like. And unfortunately, at least when I first dove into it, it didn't meet those expectations, those ideas that I had in mind for it. This is exactly what I was looking for and truly showcases how great Old Dominick is. Now, as I'm talking to you, we forgot to talk about the finish. And I'll go ahead and let you know that all of those flavors are still sitting there on my tongue. Now, it is a bit drying, which older whiskeys for me tend to be, especially those that have a heavier char, especially here on the mid palate. But the flavors are just staying and lingering, that slight bit of baking spice with a hint of sweetness. Now, if you are looking for a flavor bomb, especially at 100 proof, which I don't know if I mentioned that earlier or not, this is a 100 proof whiskey. This is a definite must. It checks all the boxes. 8-year age statement, heavy charred oak, $60 at 100 proof, and packed full of flavor. I can't recommend this bottle enough. I've had other 100 proof whiskeys, and those don't touch this one right here. Now, you're not here to watch me just rave about how great this is, or maybe you are, but let's see how batch number 1 compares. Now, I'll go ahead and tell you, for me, I don't typically enjoy whiskeys that seem to be just overbearing with those wood tannins and those oaky flavors. If they play well with the sweetness, those caramel notes, those spicy notes, then I'm all for it. However, if it's just, in your face char, then that's something that's off-putting for me. And that's what this one was when I first cracked it. Now, as you can see, I have gone back to it in several attempts to try to enjoy it and pick out those notes that I expected, that I did end up getting here from batch 2. Now, as I started to sip on it more oxygen was introduced into the bottle. Those flavors, at least for me, did change, and I was starting to pick up on some slight differences compared to when I originally did. So I do have some in the Glen here from batch number 1. So in on the nose. So when comparing apples to apples, which I guess that we are, this one is a little lackluster. But again, more oxygen has been introduced into this, so I would imagine that perhaps some of the nosing notes wouldn't be as prominent. Now, what I am getting, though, first and foremost, is going to be those oak notes. That seems to be really at the forefront. Whereas here in batch number 2, where those sweet caramel notes, that's allspice or baking spice, even some buttercream and maple notes, this one right here is going to be a little bit more oak and wood forward. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't have any sweet notes to it. Those are definitely there, but a lot more subtle. This kind of reminds me of like a slight caramel note, very faint, maybe even almond, which I tend to get whenever I am describing like a wood note. I tend to pick up on more almond. Pleasant now, but still a little bit lackluster compared to this guy. So in on the palate, batch 1, cheers. All right, I'm not mad at it. I'm glad that I gave it time. I'm glad that I revisited it because the flavor is much better than when I originally opened it. Now, am I getting more of those wood influence notes compared to here? Very much so. In fact, as I'm talking to you, it leads with those oak influences. You get some of the sweetness and the spice, and then it turns into a slight bitter note. That's not off. It's not unpleasant, a little off-putting, but it's not going to make it where I wouldn't purchase this again, especially now getting to go back to it. It is a little bit more drying on the tongue. I did forget, ran out of water. Probably should have rinsed my palate between sips, but that's all right. One more time for batch 1. Cheers. All right. So again, going back to it, sweetness, a little bit of that baking spice, but a lot more oak influence that is there. Did this one strike out for me? Going back to it now, almost a year later, I would say no. Is it what it could be and should be, in my opinion, here in batch 2? No. Batch 2, hands down, if you can find it in your area, 100% pick it up. Okay. I don't know what else to say about it. Fantastic whiskey. Old Dominick knocked this one out of the park. Now, speaking of Old Dominick, which we've done this whole video, if you happen to be in the Memphis area from now until I believe September 7th, they are doing free tours of the distillery. Now, having been a fan and living in the Memphis area, I've never done a tour. I've visited their bar. I have visited their gift shop many a time. I need to actually book a free tour to get to see that. Now, another cool thing, I do have a friend who works for Old Dominick. Her name is Morgan. She hooked me up with some staves from some old barrels. And if you've been following the channel, I am working on building a barrel bar using another one of my favorite distilleries, Blue Notes barrels. Now, I have some other cool ideas to use with those Old Dominick staves, and you'll just have to follow the channel in order to see what I do with those. So, all right, as always, I appreciate you watching the channel. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe. Lots of great content moving forward, just like this video here. Have you had the batch 1 of Old Dominick Reserve 8-year from last year? If so, what were your thoughts? Will you be going after batch 2? You need to get batch 2. Leave that down for me down in the comments below. And be sure that you like this video. That just helps to spread awareness about the great things that we do here at Game and Grains. All right, guys, as always, thank you for watching till the end. I'm your favorite player one, Richard. Have a good one.